Hello, and welcome back to our weekly Sunday school lesson. I am Elder Latanya Milliken of the All Nations Church in Oakland, California. My pastor is Bishop Terrence L. Milliken, and this is lesson 3 in our fall quarter. The date of our lesson is September the 17th, 2023, and we are again in the book of Joshua. This week, we will be highlighting the 6th chapter. Our reading will be the 6th chapter, the 2nd through the 4th verse, and we're going to hop over to the 12th and read to the 20th verse. Our subject today is the fall of Jericho. The fall of Jericho. Very, very exciting lesson. And before we get started, want to give a shout out to those of you who are celebrating a birthday, an anniversary, engagement, whatever you're celebrating, God's blessings, God's favor, God's protection over your celebration. I believe my niece, Janelle, is celebrating a birthday. Her and her husband took a little quick trip away. I'm not going to disclose, but they probably are posting it on Facebook. But enjoy yourself. Live your best life. Happy birthday to you, Janelle. And to anyone else who is celebrating God's blessings and favor in your life. It's been a beautiful week. We're winding down, and now we're back again with you. I'm happy to be with you, and I want to say thank you to each and every one of you who are very supportive in this journey, the Sunday school journey, the Sunday school mission. And from what I'm hearing, a lot of people are eliminating Sunday school, but I tell you, I am growing, and Sunday school is so valuable. And so make sure you're sharing this. Make sure you're sharing what you learn. Make sure you're sharing and liking it and subscribing it with your friends and family and anyone you want to be a blessing to. So let's get started with our lesson. It's a great lesson. So last week we were in the book of Joshua, the 2nd chapter. We talked about how God protects his children. Joshua sent out 2 spies, and the Lord led them to Rahab's house, and Rahab hid them from the king's soldiers. She gave them the message they needed to bring back a great report. She then gave them advice: go into the hills for 3 days. She let them down her window because her house was strategically nestled in the walls of Jericho. And so they were successful in getting the word to Joshua. And so this was it. This is all they needed, right? And so very exciting things happen. So in between chapter 2 and chapter 6, a couple of things happened. So I'm gonna bridge that gap for you, and then we're gonna jump into our lesson. So what happened? So they got back with a good report. They were on the other side of the River Jordan when they were spying out the land. And so the Lord said, let's go, get up, and let's go across the River Jordan. So God gives them specific instructions to have the priests take the Ark of the Covenant and have everyone else get ready to cross. As the priests stepped into the River Jordan, the water came back. It was, let me just give you this. It was harvest time. The riverbank was overflowing and the water was high. But as the priest stepped into the water rolled back, and the children of Israel came through on dry land. And so now they are on the other side of the Jordan. And they took 12 stones, each a stone that represents each one of the tribes, and they built a memorial to honor, to remind their children. So if they say, what is that stone? They could say, this is when the Lord parted or dried up Jordan as we coming across to possess the promised land. And then also, so they crossed the Jordan, they made a memorial, and then this was the generation. This was the 2nd generation that had come out of Egypt. So their fathers and mothers had come to the promised land, but then they were disobedient and didn't possess the land. And so they wandered in the wilderness for 40 years for all of that generation to die out. And now you have this new generation, and this new generation had not built this covenant with God. So God is reestablishing the covenant with them, and and instructed them to for the males to be circumcised. So they then had all the males over a certain age circumcised, and after they healed, they celebrated the Passover, and now they were ready to go. And so these things, this is what happened in between the second chapter and the sixth chapter, and that leads us right up to our lesson where we are today. So they are crossed the Jordan. Now they're about less than 5 miles away from Jericho, and they've reestablished their covenant with the Lord. They had not seen, this generation had not seen the miracles in Egypt. They had not seen the parting of the Red Sea, but now they're getting ready to really see the God. They had now witnessed the miracle of Jordan drying up and them coming across, and they're getting ready to see another major miracle. But we're not there yet. So let's do our reading real quick. If you have your favorite translations, we are in Joshua, the 6th chapter, the 2nd verse. We have and we're going to I'll begin reading at the 2nd verse. But the Lord said to Joshua, I have given you Jericho, its kings, and all its strong warriors. You and your fighting men should march around the town once a day for 6 days. 7 priests will walk ahead of the ark, each carrying ram's horn. On the 7th day, you are to march around the town 7 times with priests blowing the horns. Okay, that ends the 4th verse. We're going to hop over to the 12th verse. Joshua got up early the next morning, and the priests again carried the ark of the Lord. The 7 priests with the ram horns marched in front of the ark of the Lord, blowing their horns. Again, the armed men marched both in front of the priests with the horns and behind the ark of the Lord. All this time, the priests were blowing their horns. On the 2nd day, they again marched around the town once and returned to the camp. They followed this pattern for 6 days. On the 7th day, the Israelites got up at dawn and marched around the town as they had done before. But this time they went around the town 7 times. The 7th time around, as the priests sound the long blast on their horns, Joshua commanded the people, shout, for the Lord has given you the town. Jericho and everything in it must be completely destroyed. As an offering to the Lord, only Rahab the prostitute and the others in her house will be spared, for she protected our spies. Do not take anything set apart for destruction, or yourselves will be completely destroyed, and you will bring trouble on the camp of Israel. Everything made of silver, gold, bronze, or iron is sacred to the Lord and must be brought into his treasury. When the people heard the sound of the ram horn, they shouted as loud as they could. Suddenly the walls of Jericho collapsed, and the Israelites charged straight into the town and captured it. I wasn't supposed to read that last. This is supposed to be 28, but I just got to get that last little bit in. Let's unpack this lesson and see what's going on. And so Jericho. This is such a fun lesson. Listen, I'm putting myself I'm putting myself in the shoes of the Israelites. One part of this lesson, and then I'm putting myself in the shoes of someone living inside of Jericho. So right now I'm sitting at my dinner table in Jericho, right? And Jericho was shut up, right? No one could go in, no one could go out. It was fortified. It was built on a hill, and they had several years of food stored up and fresh water. So they were not afraid, right? They wasn't afraid in a sense that they felt, well, they trusted in the walls, that the walls would protect them, right? And so you've got this group of people, right, that's at one point on the other side of the Jordan River. And you know, they were less of a threat on the other side of the Jordan River. But now, all of a sudden, they right in our backyard. So I'm starting to get a little antsy here, right? I'm like, and then I hear about, oh my God, their Lord, their God dried up the river. Not only am I, as a Jericho citizen, getting nervous, the king is getting nervous. So a little bit about the walls of Jericho, because as I was studying this lesson this week, I was oh my God, reading resources and articles about this wall and what archaeologists have found, and they have verified a couple of things that the scripture was sharing with us. One of which is that there were homes built in the walls, and there was stone walls plus a mud brick walls. So they were able to find some of this as they were digging. They were able to verify some of the things we're reading about, which was exciting. And so let me just share with you a little bit about the walls. And so the walls were 3 tiers. And so if you have the time, just Google and see the walls of Jericho, and it'll show you. So you had the stone wall, and which was about 12 feet. And then there was another mud brick wall. On top of the stone wall was a mud brick wall that was 6 feet thick, right? And then, so you have the wall here, and then you've got this what is it? A rampart, or just an incline, where people could live in between. So in between the walls, people were living. There were homes inside these walls. So you had an upper city, and then you had a lower city. So in between from the upper city to the lower city, in between these were walls. So you have this wall again, stone wall, mud brick wall. Then you had this incline, but people lived doing this in this space. And then you had another, on the top of this incline, you had another tall mud brick wall. So it was double fortified with a wall, and it was real tall. Okay. So we have the retaining wall, then you've got a mud brick wall on top of that, and it's double fortified, and then you've got this upper city where people live. And so interesting concept here, right? So when you think about the walls of Jericho, you should just kind of picture like this 4-story tall building of a portion of the wall. And so you've got a place that is impregnable. I mean, there's just literally no way to get in, right? So, I mean, this is, and we have to cover these details, because you got to understand this miracle. You have to understand the details. This is not a commercial. This has archaeological proof that it's happened, that it's been there. It's written in the scripture, and we're talking about it today, the walls of Jericho. So now we've talked about the wall. We've talked about it being impregnable, and so the children of Israel is wondering what's going on too, but they're following the instruction of Joshua, because Joshua, the Lord has says, I've given it to you. This is what I need you to do. And so in our lesson, the Lord tells them, okay, I need you to have for the priests to carry the ark, and I need 7 priests to blow horns, right? Ram's horns. And I need the men of war in front and the men of war in back of the priests. And the Ark of the Covenant represented the presence of the Lord. So they march around Jericho one day, right? This group of people, and they can't talk. They can't talk. All they can do is march and blow the horns. And that's all the people of Jericho would hear was feet marching and horn blowing. So you wonder what the conversation was like at dinner the first night they walked around the walls of Jericho. What they doing? Wonder what they doing. And I'm sure they was mocking them and laughing at them. Then there's day 2, same thing. Then day 3, same thing. Then day 4, day 5, and day 6, the same thing. I would start getting a little nervous if I was living in the walls in Jericho. How about you? What are your thoughts? I really want you to think about this lesson. And I want you to think about, too, the fact that they could not talk. It reminds me of the time when the Lord told, this was going to be in the future. In the future, when Zechariah, the angel of the Lord came to Zechariah and said, you're going to have a son. And he says, well, how am I going to have a son? I'm old, da, 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 da. And the angel said, you will not be able to talk until it happened. Because sometimes we talk ourselves out of things. We talk too much. And so no talking. I love this. Is an important point. They could not talk. They could only march. And they had to come back to the camp at the end of the 6 days. On the 7th day, they marched around 1 time, then 2 times, then 3 times. Now, I know they got some attention then, because at first they was only marching 1 time. Now, today, they still marching 4 times, 5 times, 6 times. And then on the 7th time, they blew they were waiting for the long blast of the ram's horn. And then after that, they were supposed to just shout as loud as they could. And this was the shout of victory. And so the lesson stopped right there. It didn't tell you that the walls fell, but the walls fell down. And so the Lord gave them instructions. This is the first city that you're going to conquer. I need you to pay your tithes. Everything that you take, any silver, gold, brass, or iron, is mine. And it goes into the treasury, the church treasury. Everything else you cannot touch. It's damaged. It's accursed. I want you to wipe it out and destroy it. Because God, it was just because every material thing, all the people, the city was accursed. It was banned from taking anything. They were to destroy it. Everything and everyone except for Rahab and her family. They were spared because this was a pagan city. And the Lord didn't want them having pagan things, right? And this was the city. This was the first winning. This was the first city that they were taking. And it wasn't, and the Lord gave them victory. But the point is that he came through for them, but they followed instructions. The fall of Jericho is the subject of our lesson. Let me give you the aim of the lesson. It's to show how God helped Joshua and his people overcome Jericho by trusting him. And they did. They trusted God, and they followed all of the instructions. And they had victory. The principle of the lesson is to show that God is a victorious God who works on the side of those who trust him. To teach the application that when we trust God, he will make us victorious. When we trust God, he will make us victorious. And we have to follow the instructions. And do less talking. Less talking, follow the instructions, and we will have the victory. What a phenomenal lesson. What a phenomenal way to victory. God is delivering on his promise to the children of Israel. They are beginning to take possession of the promise that God had given to their forefathers. And so we have time for me to read the conclusion. Leave the class with the assurance that we have a God who loves us so much that he wants us to have victory every time. But when we disobey and stray from what he tells us to do, the journey in the wilderness gets longer and longer until we realize that we need to get back to God and obey him. The sooner we learn to obey his instructions, the sooner we will find ourselves on the victorious side. God will always keep instructing his children and waiting for their obedience. Victory comes from the Lord our God. We dare not forget that every victory in our lives comes from his loving hands as a result of his love for us. Always choose to obey him. Next week, we will explore how God responds to Israel's pleas for help because of the oppression they were suffering under Moab. God empowered Ehud. Ooh, that's a good lesson too, Ehud. Yes, tune in next week. That's a good one to lead Israel to victory. I hope you enjoyed the lesson. Again, this is a beautiful lesson, how God delivers. He always protects and provides for his children. He always gives us instructions. We must follow his instructions. God bless you. Like it, subscribe it, share it. Until next week, live your best life and obey God.